All right, so please introduce yourself and tell us why you're here.
Great. My name is Piper Crowell, and I'm running for mayor of Portland.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your background, please. Where did you grow up?
I grew up all over. My mom was a political officer in the State Department, so we had the privilege of living a little bit abroad, both in China and in Paris, and then also in DC.
Okay, where did you go to high school?
In Northern California, Marin County.
Okay, and college?
Amherst College in Western Massachusetts.
Okay, so that's a long way from Portland. How did you get to Portland?
So I moved to Portland 3 years ago. I had heard amazing things about Oregon growing up from my family, who has a long history here, and have absolutely fallen in love.
Okay. Between college and Portland, I think you worked in politics. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my entire career has been working to improve regulations and policies at many levels of government.
So what specifically have you done?
So my initial focus was on environmental policy. So I worked in a number of climate change campaigns, from local solar to trying to pass climate caps back in the day that did not work.
Can you be a little specific about those campaigns, where they were?
Oh, sure. So I did local solar in New Jersey. That was a campaign, really grassroots campaign. I worked on...
So what was that campaign?
So we were trying to change some of the regulations to allow people who are putting solar on their roofs to be able to sell that back to the grid.
So was this a campaign to change laws in the New Jersey?
I think it was municipality regulations, if I remember. I think it was 8 years ago. But
And so what were you doing in that realm?
it was really generating grassroots support. So going door to door, getting petitions.
And you're doing this on the behalf of?
I worked, at the time it was with Environment New Jersey.
Which is kind of like an OSPR?
Yes, it's the environmental affiliated group with, it'd be Environment Oregon here.
You were a paid staffer for them?
Yes.
And your goal was to go door to door to build grassroots support?
It was.
And you did that for?
It was a campaign season. So I think at that time it might have been 4 months on that campaign.
And then?
Then I worked on another campaign. So then I worked on preservation campaigns, worked on the federal level. So it was a 2-year fellowship with Environment America.
Oh, okay.
So I was just highlighting specific campaigns.
That's sort of like Teach for America?
No, I think that it's it's the Environment Oregon's parent company is Environment America.
What is Environment America?
It's a 501c3 as well as has some C4 in terms of direct
And it hires
advocacy.
young people to do 2-year fellowships.
Yeah, so you learn grassroots organizing, coalition building, media work, and direct advocacy as well as.
And so you do that for 2 years, all over the country.
I was focused mainly in New England, but then I would work on some campaigns, in the Mid-Atlantic, as well as I think that was led into the 2008 Obama campaign. So we went on, I think it was about 6 months and worked with Progressive Future. That was
So I'm sorry, is this right post-college?
yeah, it was my first job out of college.
You get out of college, you get a 2-year
Fellowship.
ship, all over the country working on campaigns.
Yeah.
Okay, and that takes you to what year roughly?
2009, and then I moved to DC and worked specifically on clean water, still with Environment America, and a little bit more focused there. Still mostly federal policies. Worked with some of the states on more state-focused issues,
And
but a
what
clean.
specifically were you doing in that realm? Were you lobbying or?
Yep. So it was lobbying in some of the research. So.
And were you lobbying Congress?
Yes.
And how'd you like that?
I liked it a lot. It was an interesting time, right? So Obama was elected. We felt like we had a lot of momentum, trying, really to figure out how to repair some of the damage that had been done to the Clean Water Act, which now we're seeing the opposite of.
Mm-hmm.
And we made some progress.
So you go from there to working for Congressman
Huffman.
Oh.
So Congressman Huffman, who was at the time an assembly member in Northern California who had a great environmental track record. He had been a clean water attorney for NRDC, and he wanted someone to come out and run his campaign. So I left DC and went to Northern California for about a year and a half to be his campaign manager for his first run for Congress.
And what did that involve?
Being a campaign manager is a lot of things. I think from my perspective, it was really creating the strategy and then implementing the strategy that would get him to victory, which, you know, it was a big district and it was a very unique campaign. It was the first time California had a jungle primary, so a top 2 primary, and the district had been completely redrawn. So it went from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Oregon border. It included Marin, Mendocino, part of Sonoma, Humboldt, Trinity, and Del Norte County.
Really rich and really poor.
Really rural and pretty suburban.
Yeah.
And it was a lot, you know, balancing a lot of those different interests.
What's the registration breakdown in that district?
I can't remember.
Well, is it a D or an R district?
Oh, sorry, I think meant how many people were registered to vote. I was like, oh. So it depended on the county. So overall, in total, Democrat for sure. But that's because the population base is really focused in Marin. Out of the counties, Del Norte is a Republican county, Humboldt and Trinity. Mendocino tends, you know, Democrat, but still has quite a number. And Sonoma breaks.
Okay.
So you run the campaign and you went back to DC?
I did. We won the campaign,
Okay.
and then I became his legislative director, and ran his, you know, legislative policy shop for a number of years. He was on the Natural Resources Committee, which is, you know, again, my environmental focus, and then he was also on the Budget Committee his first year, which was a great opportunity to learn what it's like to be in the minority working on a budget. And then he switched over to transportation and infrastructure. But during that time, you know, we were able to pass a number of bills, even in the minority. And a lot of them was because you have to get really crafty and work across the aisle.
Okay, so you worked for him for about 4 years.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Then what?
Then I left the Hill and I worked for Pandora Music.
Pandora.
Yeah, music, yeah.
What were you doing for them?
So I was one of their lobbyists in their DC office. They're based in Oakland.
Right. And what were you doing for them?
Lobbying on a number of different issues. One that we got passed was around bots. So Pandora owned Ticketfly at the time. As most people have experienced, if you're trying to buy concert tickets for a hot show, you often are beat out by bots. So we worked to make sure that consumers had a fair shot at getting tickets. And so we, in the legislation itself, increased criminal penalties for bot operators.
So just walk
Under
us
Section
through
5.
the whole, what color is your parachute moment in your life when you've spent 8 years after college working on your passion, which is environmental legislation. You clearly care deeply about it. It's more than just a job to you, it's a passion, and they say, I'm gonna go work for Pandora.
Yeah, so I think that moment came when I was working on the Hill and realizing that digital and tech was something that we did not have the rules for to understand or to properly regulate. And because we represented a number of tech companies and were part of the Bay Area, not quite in Silicon Valley, but we had a lot of, you know, tech coming up in our district, I started to have that moment of, wait a minute, the apps I'm on every single day, the amount of time we're spending on our phones, and the lack of regulation is going to be a problem here. And when I talked to the folks at Pandora, I realized, you know, they're one of the first apps that were on the phone. And they're starting to face the competition from Apple, from Amazon, from some of the bigger players. And this is going to get really interesting really fast. And, you know, a lot of what drives me is results and making an impact. And I looked at the landscape and I was like, oh, I could make a big impact here.
So how long were you at Pandora?
About 2 years, I believe.
Then Nike, were you recruited to come here, or were you looking for a way off the East Coast?
I was looking at different options. Pandora was about to be acquired by SiriusXM.
Oh.
And I saw the job post for Nike, and I think we were about 5 months into the Trump administration. It was actually getting really hard to even work on issues that were bipartisan that we had worked on with the DOJ around, consent decrees and other initiatives that he hadn't put people in positions to get work done. So we couldn't even forward the things we had been working on, and it was getting a little bit frustrating. So I realized, okay, can my talents be better used elsewhere? And when I saw the Nike post for, doing this type of work outside of DC, I didn't even know that was an option. And came out here, realized this would be an amazing place to live and work, and was fortunate enough to be offered the position.
Okay, so you've been here 3.5 years,
yep.
Roughly, right? So let's turn toward your decision. We may come back to Nike, but let's turn toward your decision. What got you interested in running for office?
Public service is something that I truly believe in. Obviously part of my family has spent a lot of their time in service, and it is, core to who I am and what I want to do. So when I looked at the problems that I was seeing in the city, I thought, something should be done about these. And I looked at this race and I said, I don't see anyone that looks like me here or has my history.
What problems did you see that most concerned you? Is there a single issue that brought you into this race?
Yeah, it would be people affected by homelessness. It's hard to walk around Portland for more than an hour and not see it.
So we had this conversation with Mayor Wheeler 4 years ago, and in essence he said the same thing. The number one issue for him at that time was addressing the homeless situation. He and Deborah Kafori, a lot of other elected officials have been working on it diligently, at least they tell us they have. So why would you, a person who hasn't lived here even as long as he's been mayor, well, about the same time, why would you be more effective than he's been?
Yeah, I believe that my work experience and my leadership style and my approach would produce a different result. My plan would be to bring city council together to work as a team and to make this a cross-cutting priority in which every city council member through their bureau and through their departments would have clear deliverables and a common objective among us so we can find the synergies to create a holistic solution. And yes, it's going to require incremental steps and it's going to take a lot of time and energy, but I believe that as a team we can get it done.
So what is it that the team needs to do? What specifically would you do if you could wave your wand as mayor to fix the homeless problem?
I think you're going to have to wave your wand a lot of times. I think it's going to take a lot of different solutions to this problem, and I'll walk you through some of them, sure. I think, from my perspective, and I'm going to step back, and I understand a lot of this has been done, so I'm not reinventing a wheel here, but it's just how I approach situations. I kind of see it in 3 different buckets. One is that you got to triage. We got to stop more people from becoming homeless, and that's going to, it's going to be a lot of different components, but one, it's for families who are being evicted. What proactive things can we get in there before they end up on the streets?
What, for example?
Sure, so you can make sure that people know that they have resources, that if they're about to lose their home, that we as the city can intervene or through a nonprofit, and is there a way to keep them in their home for 30 more days and bring services to them so that they don't end up homeless in 30 days from there. So you could see it as being rent assistance, it could be making sure that person gets a job.
Staff will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the last couple of years Commissioner Udaley has significantly increased protections for renters.
Yeah.
Do you agree with everything she's done?
I don't know everything she's done, but based on what I've read,
you're obviously a student of City Hall.
I
care deeply about homelessness. No one has attempted to do more than that than Commissioner Udaley.
on housing. I believe that.
So what is it that she's done that you agree with, and what is it that she's done that we'll leave aside the stuff you're not aware of. Of what you're aware of, what has she done that you're supportive of, and what has she done that you're
I think
concerned with?
I would focus, I think that some of what she's done on housing and protecting and allowing people to stay in their homes I think will hopefully pay dividends. I don't think we've had long enough to see the results, but I do believe that making sure that renters in particular have rights and are clear, and the no cause eviction pieces, I believe those will result in less people ending up on the streets. So I think that we need more of that, and
more would be what?
I think one thing that I'm interested in exploring is for folks who own their homes, but the cost of, or the value of their homes is rising, and so their property taxes are increasing. Can we make sure that people in those situations have the resources they need to stay in their homes? I don't know how big of a problem that is. I have heard from folks that that's an issue, so I would like to explore that and figure out if there is some mitigation we need to do there.
What kind of mitigation?
I'd have to talk to some more housing experts about exactly what that would look like, but to me it doesn't make sense that just because you live in a place where the property value is rising that you might lose your home.
But is that one of the significant factors in driving homelessness, that older folks are getting forced out of their homes because property taxes?
As I've said, I need to look into it more, but I've heard that's a concern, so it's something that interests me.
Yeah, I've just not heard that that's a legitimate piece of why there's increased homelessness in this city.
Yeah, no, I want to look at it more. I've heard that it is. So again, I think we need more data, right? I think that when you say what things would you do, having real data would be one that I would be focused on, and making sure that we know, yes, exactly to this question. Is that a real factor? If it's not, let's not prioritize it. We should be spending our resources where we know we can have the most return, and understanding, okay, so we pilot this thing, or, for you, something that Commissioner Udaley has done, what impact is that having? The only way we're going to know is if we get data on a regular basis that tracks the results. And I think that we have a ton of, creative and intellectual capital here, and universities that we could tap into to make sure that we're getting that data, and creating that feedback loop.
So one item that may be on the May ballot along with you running for mayor is a social services measure.
Yeah.
$300 million a year, possibly a bond, possibly structured in another way, possibly a wealth tax. Where do you stand on that measure? Do you want it on the May ballot? And if it's on the May ballot, will you be voting for it?
I think if people want it on the May ballot, it should be on there. I think we need more resources, in my opinion. And what's tough to me as a person, as a voter, is that every time I open up my ballot, I feel like I'm being asked to pay more money on issues I believe in, but with no trust or guarantee that that money is going to the right places, and that we're seeing the results from it. So now running for mayor, I would want to ensure that that money goes to where we're saying it's going to go, and do everything in my power to make sure it's effective, and then let voters know where it's going. Because to me, that transparency is lacking, and sometimes it's because it's hard because you don't have the data, but it's also sometimes hard because you have to say, we did some things that didn't work.
So we're talking about, in the city, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar enterprise when we consider the all funds budget, not just the general fund budget.
Yeah.
And you've held a variety of positions, but none of them has that kind of budget authority or the kind of management authority to essentially be in charge of an organization that employs 6,000 people. So what in your background suggests that you're able to take on that kind of responsibility?
Sure, I've taken on a lot of jobs and a lot of issues in a lot of areas that I didn't have the exact qualifications or I hadn't done before. The way that I've been effective in, every position I've held and exceeded expectations was working with others and working with a team and being humble about what I didn't know and finding ways to bring other people into the mix.
Are you familiar with the city budget?
To some degree, yes.
I mean, can you tell us, for example, what the annual budget
A
is?
little bit over $5 billion.
No, for the police department.
I cannot tell you that.
Okay. So, you're talking about how there's evidence in your past of your ability to become a successful mayor. Can you point to one thing professionally, an accomplishment that says, I've got the ability to lead the 25th largest city in America. Here's something that I've done in the past. Here's a mountain I climbed. Here's something that I, provided leadership for and got it done.
Sure. So when I worked for Congressman Huffman, we were in the minority in Congress. I led a team, and one thing we got done was working with the administration to have the Point Arena Stornetta public lands designated as a national monument. And to do that, we had to bring in a lot of different folks. And it was incredibly competitive because there was, we had a president who wanted to protect lands, but everywhere in the country wanted their lands protected. So we had to demonstrate why we were the most important and the most deserving. And so we had to bring in landowners and cattlemen and the very local folks to the tourism bureau to make a compelling argument. And we were able to do that.
And which now a national monument?
Yes, it's an extension of the California Coastal
Oh, nice.
National.
What property was it?
It was a number of properties, but it's Stornetta is Point Arena Stornetta.
And if we reach back,
It's yeah. Sorry.
if we reach back to people who were involved in that effort, they'll say Piper was the person who drove this train.
I like to think that I was I would like to think that I led it with a team. I am a big believer in being a team player and that it takes many people to lead different aspects. But I do not shy away from leading things.
So, question that Tess had. In fact, Tess, your question you want to ask?
Sure.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure you're aware, Portland's kind of become this lightning rod for political demonstrations. So I'm curious to know, do you think that, or what's your stance on having an increased police presence at these type of demonstrations moving forward, especially as we near towards the 2020 elections where these sorts of opinions are going to be brought more to the surface?
Yeah, thanks, Tess. That's a great question. I think when I like to ground myself on that these are not new problems, and that the protests that we're facing are in a lot of ways not new tactics either. And yes, we need, and they're going to happen again and again. So I'm a little surprised that we don't have a better plan in place already. And to me, it's kind of two components. One, you need to have super clear guidelines going in and doing the pre-work before the protest to make it sure that the police know what their job and their role is. And that you've reached out and had conversations with community leaders, event organizers, so that in the moment when things get tense, you have a relationship and some degree of trust, and what is allowed and what is not. So when things that happen that are not allowed, then you have consistent responses from the police or whoever you're having mitigate some of the issues on the ground. To me, so that's one. I think we also need to take a really hard look and do the everyday work of mitigating and ideally de-escalating some of the tensions that exist here. And to me, a lot of that is being super clear about what our values here in Portland are, that we don't stand for hate, that we don't stand for bigotry, and that we won't accept violence.
So, with having those communications with those protest groups, the police bureau took a lot of flack last year for how closely it was communicating with one of those protest groups, with the right-wing protest group. How would you change that, or would you change that?
Well, one, I think you need to communicate, depending on the event, it's completely appropriate to talk to the group. I think you have to use, the same amount of communication across whatever group it is so that it doesn't appear that you're communicating more or less with different folks. I think a big part of it is going to be getting on the same page and understanding the balance between making sure that people and the freedom of speech is respected here, but that also we're safe. And by we, I mean, whether you're in the group, whether you're a bystander, whether you're walking down the street, whether you're a photographer on the sidelines, or you're a business. And also our motorists, who I think are getting caught up in this a little bit too, when it's not orderly and you don't have guidelines.
So one of the issues that has kind of been in front of City Council for a couple of years now, it's come back and back and back, is called the Residential Infill Program, RIP. And the sort of tension around that is moving from a single-family zoning approach in neighborhoods somewhat like the ones near here to allowing a fourplex or even an eightplex on a corner lot. So I'm curious if you've looked at that issue and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about housing. We talk a lot about the need for housing and different types of housing. It is always a balance of keeping the character of our neighborhoods, which I think are incredibly important here, and also meeting the needs of new folks, and then people that may want to live in smaller housing units or need a type of housing situation in which they can afford to live in a place where they can also walk to work and walk to the grocery store. So in general, I think that that's the exact type of ideas we need to be looking at. Also, while making sure that things like parking and the character of the neighborhood doesn't change.
So, I'm not sure you answered the question. You're in support of getting rid of single-family zoning?
I think it's a really interesting proposal.
Well, sorry, you're running for mayor, you gotta take a position because people in city council are taking a position to support or not support the idea of getting rid of single-family zoning.
I am going to say I think it's a really interesting proposal, and I want to see what else is out there too. But to me, as far as I've seen, I think it would help mitigate some of our challenges.
So you're in favor?
Of the concept, yeah.
No, not of the concept, of the execution, of basically saying that the entire city of Portland, there's no such thing as single-family housing. It's okay if you're in favor of it.
I know it's okay. I'm saying that I have not read the entire proposal line by line, and before I take a position, I like to
Is it fair for voters to expect you to do your homework before you run for mayor?
I think
so
it's
that your answer to everything is not, I'm going to study it and I'll tell you after I'm elected. Is it reasonable for us to expect you to do your homework at this point to be able to say, the proposal is actually quite straightforward. There's no single-family housing. You can build a fourplex on any lot in the city. What more do you need to study to come to a decision about whether this is good or bad?
That may not be appropriate everywhere, and I haven't looked at every single place.
So what expectations should voters have about what decisions you ought to be able to arrive at before you decide to run for mayor?
Yeah, I think voters should judge me on what they're looking for in a mayor. And if they think that I have the leadership skills and the approach to do it, they should vote for me. If they think that I don't know every single rule or law that's coming up, then they don't have to vote for me.
With all due respect, this is more than just a single law. This is a significant change in the way in which the
I understand, and I want to
thinks about housing and homelessness, which you have self-described as being the paramount issue.
And that's why I spoke to what I think is really great about it.
Well, then let me ask you about other issues as it relates to housing and homelessness. You can tell us
Sure.
whether you've come to a conclusion yet. So there's an effort to ban the box. I'm just wondering where you stand on that issue.
Yeah, I am in favor of banning the box once you have the housing and services needed for folks. I think in Salem, when they banned tents, it didn't work when you didn't have places for people to go.
You're aware that much of the affordable housing community opposes this.
That's why I'm saying, once you have the housing and services in place for people to go, then we can look at banning a box or tents. But until you have those services, it doesn't work.
I think there may be a miscommunication.
Yeah, I don't,
Sorry.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure what you think I'm talking about. I'm talking about the
I was thinking-
proposed rule to make it illegal to deny someone an apartment to rent.
Oh, okay.
Because they have a
Criminal background.
record.
Oh, sorry, the checkbox.
Yes.
Sorry, I was thinking more in the terms of banning the tents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's an
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah.
yeah, sorry, the checkbox.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, let me reset for a second. Can you ask your question again?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where you stand on that position. There's some who believe that in order to address this issue of homelessness, you have to make it easier for people who have had significant challenges in their life to be able to rent. And then you have affordable housing supporters who say, don't require that a lower income single mom has to live next to someone who has a criminal record in their past.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with this in the employment cases around should people have to check a box around their previous criminal history, and I think,
Fairly similar.
Yeah.
To the debate.
and so to me, it has been one that I never understood unless it's, a case where I think I got a little uncomfortable when it would be like a sexual offender or someplace that would end up on a registry anyway.
Mhm.
that if someone had been, in prison for a certain amount of time for something, that should that impede their ability to get housing? That doesn't make sense to me. Should it impede their ability to get a job? That never made sense to me.
Okay.
So one of the things that, beyond housing and homelessness, that people are unhappy about in Portland is congestion. So Mayor, the biggest positive move that we've seen perhaps is Commissioner Udaley's move to institute bus-only lanes on certain busy thoroughfares, the so-called red lanes. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about those red lanes, and secondly, if you have any thoughts about whether the mayor has a role to play with traffic congestion.
So I'll start with the bus lanes in transit. I think, yes, making sure that buses can move faster is going to be how we get more people to use them, and the more people we get out of their cars, the better for the traffic, for traffic and congestion. So that is my answer to the first one. I thought that proposal is a good one, and is one that ideally we got to make sure it works and make sure that ridership doesn't plateau, which is my understanding of what has been happening. So, it's got to increase ridership for it to really work. But I think the proposal is a good one. We got to be trying new and different things, so I'm in favor of that. When it comes to the mayor and traffic, yeah, I think that there's a role to play. Yes, there's other folks that may have, a greater role, if it's TriMet or Metro, but the mayor can't sit this one out. You got to be part of the discussion. I think even because both people in Portland are demanding it, but also we're going to face the impacts. So if you think of I-5, and to me, I think that there was a more proactive role the mayor could have played just in the conversation. I'm not saying that he had...
You're talking about the Rose Quarter?
Yes, Rose Quarter,
project.
I-5 expansion project.
Right. How would you see that? How would he have done a better job, or how would a different mayor do a better job?
Well, on the kind of the soft tactics, which I know some people think aren't as important, but I truly believe a lot of politics is in this soft politics and relationship building, and part of our job is to make sure that people's voices are at the table. So, I would just start there, and then now that we've gotten where we are, I think, the East Bank Esplanade is a great hook into making sure that the environmental study is done, and that any potential impacts for that community are addressed and thought of on the onset.
So one of the levers that City Hall has in terms of congestion is parking pricing. They control the big parking lots, big parking garages downtown. They control the price of parking in this neighborhood and all other neighborhoods that have either meters or parking permits. So would you be in favor of significantly increasing the cost of parking as a means of reducing congestion and driving more people to transit or other alternatives?
I haven't seen that be effective.
Really?
In my experience, in DC and other places. So I want to see a little bit of data to show that if you increase it, I'd assume it'd be marginally. Yes, maybe if you make it 3x, then people aren't going to drive because, it would cut in too much. But if you bump up the meters by 25 cents, 50 cents, is it really going to stop someone from parking? I don't think, at least my experience has not shown that. So I'd want to see someone show me that really makes a difference before I'd support that.
I want to switch and talk a little bit about data and security, since it sounds like you got a little bit immersed in that with Pandora. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about whether or not the state of Oregon should outlaw the use of facial recognition tech by police departments.
Wait, just by police departments, or the proposal that we've seen around other folks?
Well, there's only one state that's passed it, and that's your former state, New Jersey.
Well, I would not call it my former state.
Yes, but that legislation.
For police.
No, that legislation is.
Yeah. So to me,
but also for police.
let me back up in just terms of how I view facial recognition. One, to me, it's less about the technology and it's more about the data that has gone into it and how the programs have been educated, right? So if you're building it off white male faces, you're going to get results that are biased. And that's, in my mind, what we've been seeing. It's also how you read the data and what data sets you compare it to, and then how the AI and machine learning build off. So facial recognition just as a tool itself, to me, absent the background data that's often allowing it to be biased, it as a tool, as a technology, to me shouldn't be banned. What should be done is you should not use it until we get those data sets right. If you are using a tool that is inherently biased because that's how you built it, it's not an appropriate tool for us to use.
Right, so your concern is with bad facial recognition, not good facial recognition.
Yes.
But you're aware there's some legitimate libertarian concerns about good facial recognition. Not just that there's a bias against it.
And that's to me about how you apply it and where you're applying it.
Right.
Correct. And I think to me, like a lot of the technology out there, it's about consent and making sure that people are aware and are opting in.
Well, no, that's impossible with facial recognition.
Not if you're talking about in the retail space. Like in Europe, you have to put up a
The
sign.
police departments that are using facial recognition, they're not asking people if it's okay to use their photos. The technology is scraping people's photos off the internet. No one's asking for anybody's consent to use their photos. That's not the issue. The issue is whether it's
one of the
appropriate
issues.
for police departments or others to be able to take a photo of you when they saw at a crowd at an Antifa protest, and then use that photo to potentially take some action. The state of New Jersey has determined, no, we don't want to give anybody those tools. I'm just asking.
So in the context, I was still in the broader context. So that's where we started. If you want to talk about specifically, should police on the back end be able to use different tool
how about
sets?
that? Should the Portland police be able to use facial recognition tools?
I believe so, as long as they are not biased. So good. When we were talking about good facial recognition tools, yes.
We recently wrote about an unusual event at Nike as a protest where some employees walked out of the buildings around the Alberto Salazar issue. What was your position on that issue?
On the protest or on the issue?
Well, both.
I did not participate in the protest.
What was your position on the issue?
On the issue of, there was a lot of different.
Well, Salazar was accused of a lot of things, but one of them specifically was mistreating young female runners in a variety of ways. And then he was going to be honored still, or he was still.
Well, they redeveloped the building and they kept his name on it, so that's what the protest putatively was about.
There was a lot of different messaging about what that protest was about. I did not participate in that protest.
Why not?
I got a lot of work to do that day. But I also, to me, on campus, I think that there is always a role to have people's voices heard. And
Piper, but Nigel's asking a question to try to get you to respond
I understand.
to the issue of Nike and its treatment of women and your role there, and whether you think it's appropriate to speak out, or whether you're comfortable with their treatment of women, or whether it's been overplayed.
I'm not going to weigh in on that.
Why not? You don't think it's...
Because sorry, finish your sentence.
No.
I interrupted you.
No. I mean, I was going to explain why I think you should answer, but go ahead. Why do you not think it's appropriate for a candidate for mayor to weigh in on the conduct of her current employer?
So now you're asking me, okay, so you're...
Yeah, we'd like you to speak to the issue of the criticism of Nike in the last couple of years about its treatment of women, about its bro culture, and from the perspective of someone who is obviously a successful executive at Nike and a woman, how do you view all this? Is Nike being appropriately called to task? Is Nike getting a bad rap? And in fact, it's not as bad a place as journalists have described. Is it far worse? Is the real reason why you're running for mayor because you can't wait to get out of that place? I mean, give us some sense of how you think about this.
I think about it through my experience, which has been incredibly positive. I work with some amazing women who are incredible mentors to me. Mm-hmm. And my running for mayor is very separate from my current day job at Nike. And when I view Nike in terms of the city, I view it in terms of the incredible work it's done for the city of Portland. And that's, when I think about, what Portland expects from a major company.
You're informed by your past, right? I mean, you talk about your passion for the environment, you went to work for these organizations, you're interested in tech, worked for Pandora. It seems to me that it's a reasonable area of inquiry for us to wonder what you think about this company that has undergone a substantial amount of criticism for the way in which it treats women?
Yeah,
And so, fine for you to come to its defense, but it'd be
I
nice
wasn't coming to its defense
Well, no,
or
not,
criticizing it.
but
What I was saying
think
is
it's
that
inappropriate to ask you to share a little bit about how you think, how you
didn't-
process information about.
Sure, and I didn't say it was inappropriate. I just answered from my own perspective.
So from your own perspective, Nike has no problems.
That's
I'm
Is that a
sorry.
leading question?
a little bit.
Okay.
You might be leading the witness on that.
Yeah.
So from your perspective.
I've had a great experience there. I think that the work Nike does to inspire women athletes to be involved. I was inspired in 1996 when the women won the World Cup. Or actually, I think that was the year they got the gold medal, the women's soccer team, and I got to meet them because Nike held an event, and it's what made me become a soccer player. And I think that women all around the world are inspired by Nike every day. I think that if you want to talk about the internal treatment of women, I'm not the right person to ask on that one. Because I've had a great experience there. I don't think my experience, is necessarily reflective of anyone, regardless of what company you are. You shouldn't speak for other people.
So you had a great experience, and every woman at Nike that you're familiar with has had a wonderful experience there. And so the portrait of the bro culture that led to the departure of Mark Parker, let alone the Alberto Salazar stuff, is just alien to you.
I don't agree with your framing on that one.
Well, feel free to reframe it.
I think I answered the question as much as I'm going to.
Okay. Who are you going to vote for, Chloe Udaly or Sam Adams? And I ask you that because voters want to get some sense of where you lean and what kind of a mayor you want to become.
I need to hear more from both of them, honestly. I didn't know Sam in his previous role, and I know he's come back, and I want to, attend and listen to him. I think my understanding is that he did some great work when he was mayor,
Right.
and I would be, excited to work with him, and then at the same way, I know that Chloe has made some great strides, especially on housing. So I'm undecided right now,
Okay,
but
so
I am interested in hearing more from both of them.
understand you may not know a whole lot about Sam. You can't not have an opinion about Chloe.
No, that's why I'm saying I think she's done some great things in housing.
So, absent knowing anything about Sam, you're inclined to support Chloe?
Not inclined either way.
Well, okay, just let me push this for one more minute. You say you're aware of Chloe's stuff and a lot of stuff she's doing.
It's great, and I also know that Sam did a really effective,
Is there any
job.
stuff that Chloe has proposed that you take issue with?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Nothing.
Not that's coming to me right now.
How about the mayor?
Things that he's proposed that I take issue with.
Yeah.
I have not agreed with his handling of, especially this weekend, the protests and some of the work within the police department. I think that there's more oversight he can do to make sure that our police department is treating people with respect and is approaching a lot of what we're seeing on the streets in, I would say, a more peacekeeper approach than they currently are. And we also have, I think it's about 100 jobs in the police department we need to fill. So I think I would like to see the mayor take a more proactive role in, just from a purely management perspective.
What about this weekend's protest did you not think was handled properly?
I wasn't there. From what I saw and what I've read, to me it was, and having participated in my fair share of marches, it did not look like people knew what the clear rules and guidelines of where they should be and when, and that there were folks who were clearly communicating that back to them in a respectful way.
It's late in the primary season. It is mid-February. Why'd you wait so long to get in?
I, when looking at the race, was not planning to run for mayor. And I think it's no question that, what I bring to this is not a long history of, civic job titles. What I bring to this is an approach and a multifaceted career history that I think will allow me to build real progress here. But I didn't see anyone that looked like me in the race. And that's why I jumped in.
Because the skills that you have were not present in this race.
Well, both the skills, but also my perspective. You know, I'm younger. I'm going to come in with a more open mind. Just because I think how myself and my peers view the world. I will be the only candidate that I know of who is part of the LGBTQ community. And I'm also interested in bringing like a woman's mindset. I know there's other women running, but that's something that I think I also bring just in terms of my background.
Can you share with us an understanding of how City Hall really works? And by that I mean special interests. So, you know, virtually everybody who comes in here talks about how they're going to be free from special interests.
Sure.
That's great, I'm sure you will be too. But rather than ask you that, who are the special interests? Who are the people that have, frankly, too much pull on the levers of City Hall right now, and that someone like a Piper Crowell who comes in with a fresh perspective, independence, a more youthful attitude is going to be able to rattle it and say, I'm sorry, you've got too many seats at the table, and these other people need seats at the table. So, long question, who's got too much influence at City Hall right now?
I think influence, and I'm going to answer this from how I view influence and access, which is how, you know, as someone who both worked in government and was a lobbyist, how I view it. It's not always who's there the most. It's not always the people who are also in the headlines. I think it comes down to who has the ear of the mayor or the city council. I don't know who the mayor listens to the most. I don't. But what I can say is that from my perspective, you have to come in knowing what your values and your objectives are, and then stay true to them. And you have to listen to a lot of people, and there will be people who have a lot of money, and there will be people who gave to your campaign, and there'll be folks who have been there for a very long time and, you know, are very chummy with other folks, and they may be, you know, they may have their own views and their own interests that are very narrow. I think it's your role to listen to as many people as you can, but stay very true to your values. And that's how I view influence. And I'm not going to answer call out certain people who I think have outside.
Call out people, just call out interests. What are the special interests that have too much sway in City Hall? I mean, this is a question that's doing nothing other than testing your knowledge of how the place actually really works. I'm not asking for you to name an individual. I'm asking for you to name constituencies to demonstrate that you understand what are the pressures.
And I understand pressures you're going to have.
But so who are those constituencies? I mean, if I asked you this question and you were running for the state legislature, you'd have a different answer. If I asked you this question and you were running for Multnomah County Commission, you would have a different answer than the answer for City Hall. And we're simply trying to determine if you understand the body you're seeking to run for and how it actually works.
Yeah, and I don't think I agree with your framing on how you view what influence and who has too much power.
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
All right.
Can I have the next question?
Okay, so we're running out of time here. You came here to tell us about yourself today. What haven't we asked you about yourself that we should know?
I mean, you've asked me very little about, kind of who I view as my community and, whose voice I think I want to bring to the table. And for me, that, I would really like to see a mayor who reflects a type of Portland that I think is growing, which are, innovative and creative young people who want to bring the city together and who want to make it as, live up to its potential. And so I spend a lot of my time, with folks that are incredibly engaged and are incredibly excited, and they don't know what City Hall does, and they don't know what a mayor does, but they want to see the city working.
Okay. So, where does that energy live and where have you been part of it? So, we usually ask people what civic engagement they've had or in what way they've tried to make the city better before running for office.
Yeah, so I'm on the Oregon Innovation Council, and it has been a great opportunity to be involved with, some of the, what I would say are emerging technologies and emerging startups that are trying to make a difference for Portland and some of our key economic areas.
Unless other people have questions, I have a few quick questions to end with.
Go ahead.
What's the name of your dog?
Name my dog Ranger.
How old?
She's 5.
Okay. Where'd you get her?
She's a hound, a rescue.
Okay. Who's your favorite musician? Or group?
I go Fleetwood Mac.
Boy, that dates you.
When you go to a coffee shop, what do you usually order?
Oat milk cappuccino.
Favorite alcoholic beverage?
I would go with a Greyhound.
Okay. If the Democratic primary for presidential primary in Oregon were held today, who would you vote for? Assuming you're a Democrat.
I am a Democrat. Good assumption. I am really interested in what Klobuchar is doing right now. I think she's speaking to a group of people that don't feel like they've spoken to. I had the pleasure of working with her and her staff when I was in DC, and she's a real results-oriented woman.
What's the biggest mistake you have made in either your political work or your professional work?
Coming here. No, just kidding. The biggest mistake I've ever made. That's a good one. I've definitely, made errors. I think, sometimes I think I have overestimated what it takes to do something. And this is something that I now, you may say I'm overcompensating for by entering a race where I haven't lived long enough, or I don't know enough about, or I don't know every machination of how City Hall works. But I have found time and time again that if you say, oh, I'm not educated enough, I'm too inexperienced, and leave it up to people who may be older or who may be more entrenched or have done it longer, you're gonna miss out. And we have to step up and own the fact that, we're not gonna know things, and we may make mistakes. And it may make you look stupid sometimes, and you may have to ask dumb questions. But at the end of the day, if you believe that what you're doing is for the right reasons, and you know that you have something to offer, then you gotta do it again and again and again.
But do you have a budget for the primary? How much you think you need to raise? You're not doing public financing. Correct?
I'm not, I missed the deadline. Probably about $500,000.
And are you instituting any self-imposed contribution limits?
It's a really good question. I have, spent a lot of time working on campaigns and truly believe that we do need campaign finance reform. The amount of money that is spent on these campaigns is insane. But the only way it works is if you have that set for everyone. Voluntary measures do not work, and I do not plan to set an arbitrary limit on myself.
So Wheeler has set a limit.
I know the FEC
Some
rule.
criticism being too high.
It's the FEC limits, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that limit's not going to apply to you.
I don't plan to set a limit because I don't even understand, from that perspective, why set that limit versus another limit. There aren't
So Phil Knight decides to write you a $100,000 check. You'll take it.
I would be honored to take it.
Great, I think we're done unless anybody has any other questions.
No, thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.